Hey, financial algebra. We're going to talk about a topic that you guys probably are really familiar with because many of you have a job and you get paid an hourly rate because you have a job or a part-time job. So today we're going to discuss the different ways you can be paid. Okay. Matter of fact, how do employers pay their employees? Well, here's how some jobs, and you should probably ask or already know, but we're going to go over some terminology. Biweekly, if your job pays you biweekly, within a year you would get 26 paychecks. That's because there's 52 weeks in a year and you divide by 2 and voila, you get 26. Okay, semi-monthly means you get paid twice a month, right? And there's 12 months, so you would expect 24 paychecks in 1 year, semi-monthly. And of course, monthly is a no-brainer. That means you're going to get paid 12 paychecks once a month. Some employers do that. Not too many, but there's probably some businesses out there that still do that. A work week. A work week can be whatever your regular work week is, to be quite honest. A regular work week would be 40 hours. That's when you get benefits and stuff like that. 35 hours is not considered usually a regular work week. Usually 40 hours is. Anything over 40 hours is considered overtime. And if you're an hourly worker, overtime pays 1.5 times your hourly rate. That sometimes is called time and a half. And that's what they mean. You get 1.5 times your hourly rate if you're getting paid time and a half if you work overtime and your employer allows that. Some jobs will pay what's called double time, which means you get twice your hourly rate, okay? Which would be 2 times your hourly rate. All right, so let's work on some examples. You guys ready? Okay, here's my first example. You're paid bi-weekly. That means 26 paychecks a year, and have an annual salary of $37,000. How much do you make bi-weekly? Okay, that's my first question. Second question, if you get paid bi-weekly, how could you actually really express this algebraically? So let's tackle that one first. If you get paid bi-weekly, how do you express that as an algebraically? Well, let's think. I told you bi-weekly is 26. Let's make X your hourly rate. So 26x is how you would represent that algebraically. So, but in this particular problem, we know we're getting paid bi-weekly, and what we're looking for is how much you make bi-weekly. We know the annual salary. So that's pretty easy, you guys. You just take 37,000, divide that by 26. So bi-weekly, you can expect $1,423.08. Okay. Again, I keep stressing that I would like to see this in your homework. Okay. Not just that answer. If you keep just giving me these answers, you're not going to get a 5. You're only going to get a 4. Okay. All right. So there's the answer to number 1. Here's what bi-weekly algebraically looks like. You know your annual salary divided by 26, you can get your bi-weekly pay. Okay, example 2. Alex is paid semi-monthly. His semi-monthly salary is $1,500. What's his annual salary? Well, here you're going to need to know what semi-monthly is again. That's 24. Well, if he makes this semi-monthly and there's 24 paychecks in a year, again, this one's pretty easy as well. It's 1,500 times 24. So his annual salary is 36,000. So those are the kind of things you can compute. And I'm like, well, why would you want to know this? Well, maybe you'll get a job And, you want to quickly figure out if your employer says, well, I'm going to pay you, $1,500 dollars semi-monthly, you can figure out what that annual is. And of course, if you're looking for a job, do you want to be paid semi-monthly or bi-weekly? Those are things you can kind of use to figure out what your pay is. Okay, example 3. Sally works at McDonald's and her regular hourly rate or wage is $9.70. Okay, she works 43 hours this week. If she gets overtime, what would be her pay? Okay, her regular work week in this particular problem is going to be 40 hours. And she's going to get overtime. We're going to assume that overtime is 1.5. Okay, she gets overtime. We're going to say that's probably standard time and a half. Okay, we're going to assume it's time and a half, or I'm going to tell you it's time and a half. And a regular work week is 40 hours. What is her hourly overtime pay, and what would be her pay? I have 2 questions here. There we go. First question, what would be her pay? What is her hourly overtime pay? Okay, well, what would be her pay? I'm looking for total here. Okay. So by finding her total, we're actually going to answer this second question. So the first thing we have to figure out is she works 40 hours at $9.70. Okay, that's her regular. So that's going to give us $388. She's worked how many overtime hours? Well, if she's worked 43 hours, that means 40 minus 43. She has 3 hours overtime. Okay, so then we're going to take that 3 hours of overtime, okay, and we're going to figure out how much that pay is. Well, before we do that, we have to take her, $9.70, and she gets paid overtime, which is 1.5 times her pay. Okay, well, I don't like 1.5, so I'm going to change that to 1.5. So we are now about to find her overtime pay hourly. Okay, this is her overtime hourly pay. Well, that's going to give us $14.55. So we've now answered one of our questions. One of our questions is, what is her hourly overtime pay? Well, we just figured that out. It's $14.55. Okay, that's her overtime. All right, now remember, we've already done her weekly. This is her regular. Okay, this is her overtime. So what is going to be her pay? Okay, well, her total gross pay is that $388 plus her overtime of $14.55 times 3. Okay, because remember, she has 3 hours at that pay. So her gross is $388 plus $43.65 of overtime for a total of $431.65. And that is her total gross. So don't forget, this is her hourly overtime. She had 3 hours of that. Okay, so however you guys want to show me that. But I expect to see something. Okay. You can do that all in one equation if you guys really want. Okay. Bob, example number 4. Bob works 40 regular hours, or worked 40 regular hours last week, okay? Plus 5 hours of overtime at time and a half. We know his gross pay is $495. What is his hourly rate? Okay, so this is a little bit of algebra here, okay? We're going to have to make an equation out of this because we're working backwards from his gross pay. And we know he's worked a full 40 hours plus 5 hours overtime. And he's getting paid time and a half. So as an algebra problem, how do we tackle this one? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're looking for his hourly rate. So as an algebra problem, let's make that x. We're trying to find his hourly rate. So what do we know in this problem? How many hours has he worked? He's worked 40 here and 5 hours at time and a half. Okay, and we know the gross is this. So if we were to make an equation, what we're looking for is his hourly rate times number of hours equals gross pay. Okay, well, we know what his gross pay is. So here's our equation. We know this part already. We know that he makes $495. What we need to figure out here is his hourly rate times the number of hours. But we kind of already know that, because over up here we know he's worked 40 regular hours. So how can we express that if we don't know his hourly rate, but we know how many hours he has worked? So let's put that in there. We know he's worked 40x, right? Plus he gets overtime. Well, how many hours overtime did he make at time and a half? Well, remember that last problem we did? We know that he's got 5 hours at 1.5 times his pay. We don't know his pay, that's x. So here's his hours, but we don't know the hourly rate. So 40 hours plus 5 hours of overtime at time and a half is going to equal his gross pay. So there's that algebra problem. There's where the algebra comes in. Regular hours plus overtime. Okay, so let's do the math. 5 times that is going to give us 7.5x. So how many hours did he work? He worked 47.5 hours times his hourly rate, which is what we're trying to find. Okay, now do you see how that makes sense? His total overtime. So then you divide by regular plus overtime, and Bob makes about $10.42 per hour. Okay, regular hours, overtime hours, total hours. We're looking for the hourly rate. Okay. Last one. Here we go. Okay. Your regular work week is only 20 hours. Awesome. Wish my regular work week was only 20 hours. It's more like 50 hours. Okay. You get paid $8.50 per hour and double time pay. Oh, wow. That's even better. I only got to work 20 hours, and if I work overtime, I get double my pay? Sweet. Okay. The only thing is, you only get it if you work on a Sunday. Okay, so you probably work in the mall, and they'll pay you overtime on Sunday. So, next week, you work your regular hours plus 8 overtime hours on Sunday. What's your gross pay? Okay, well, let's get everything down here. We have 20 hours regular at $8.50 an hour. My overtime pay is double time. Okay, that's my overtime pay for X number of hours worked. Okay, so let's crank this out. So 20 hours times $8.50 is my regular pay, or your regular pay, which is $170. Now, this is at $8 at 8 hours. So the overtime pay is $8.50 times 2 times 8, which is $128. So your gross is 170 plus 128 for a total of $298. That's your gross pay before taxes, everybody, and then Uncle Sam will take his taxes out of there. Okay, that's it. Oops, sorry. Uh-oh. Oh, my camera slipped. Sorry about that. Okay, so there's that question one more time. Okay. And final answer. Okay, your turn. Please show your work, people.